Okay, I guess we can go ahead and get started. And just to let everyone know, this will be recorded and it will be available, in the future, and just you can continue to reference back to this presentation. But thank you everyone for joining us. This has been a year-long project in the making. Today we're going to talk about transitioning the OT and PT department to the third edition of the Peabody, which is very exciting for me. My name is Kristen Cunningham, for those that don't know you. I'm an occupational therapist that's been at CHOP for 22 years. And I've actually been using this third edition of the Peabody in my research project that's been ongoing since July of last year. So I've been using it for research, and have just sort of been developing this presentation in anticipation of transitioning the department. So welcome. Just a little recap, our agenda for today. We have a lot to talk about in this hour span, but just so everyone knows, again, it's going to be available and we're going to be able to keep referencing back to it. But we're going to just introduce the presenters, sort of talk about who was involved with the project. We're going to do a comparison between the Peabody 2 and the Peabody 3, things that are new and things that have stayed the same. We're going to talk a little bit about the scoring procedures, which includes a mandatory online scoring system. We're going to talk about patient privacy and handling the patient identifying data, on top of or using the online scoring system. We're going to talk about a new infection control policy and procedure that we're putting in place for the Peabody 3. And then we're going to talk about the new electronic medical record flow sheet that's going to be live in Epic for the Peabody 3. We're gonna hold questions until the end of the presentation, but certainly Kathy Barson is going to be monitoring the chat. So if anybody has a question that can't wait, certainly type it in the chat, and Kathy can let us know, and we can answer live. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce the Peabody 3 work group. It was made up of OTs and a PT, Anne. So it was Kathy Barson, Jeannie Cribben, myself, Ann Harrington, and Nora. And we really met, this has been a year-long project. So we've been meeting for a year in anticipation of this presentation. It's good that we had OTs and PTs involved. And then I don't know if anybody glanced and saw 70 slides, but not to make everybody nervous, we are not going to go through all 70 slides, but the 70 slides, what I did was the pre-reading that was attached to the meeting, and thank you for those that reviewed it. It's actually what it actually is, it's this wonderful guide to administering the Peabody 3 that the actual authors of the test, who I've been in contact with throughout this year, put together as something that they could distribute to sites that were using it. So I included it in this presentation because I'm sorry, for some reason it muted. This presentation will sort of live all together. I didn't want to include just a link in case it expired or something like that. So these are the slides that everyone had read prior to this meeting. So I'm just going to jump ahead to slide 47, and that will be Anne to discuss the PT sections. So again, apologies for so many slides. This is really, really great information from the authors themselves, really talking all about, I know you guys reviewed it, but like everything about the new test, why it was done, how it was done, the demographics and everything. So if you're like me, those that know me love that I love to read the test manuals that has great information. So this is an extension of that. Okay, let me get to slide 47 and Anne can take over. And I'll advance your slides, so just let me know.
Yeah, I'll just say next slide when it's time. That sounds great. Okay, and we can, again, thank you for including me. I would say that I certainly have not done as much work as the rest of the group, and Kristen has been an excellent leader, but happy to be part of this process. And we can go to the next slide. We'll talk about some of the differences in the gross motor subtests. So I am approaching this as though, those of you who've used the Peabody 2 in the past, and also have, certainly maybe some of you have started to dabble in with the Peabody 3 with some of our clinics, but I just wanted to give an overview of some of the content that you'll notice is different within the gross motor subtests. So if you recall from the Peabody 2, we would use 3 of those 4 subtests depending on the age of the child, and we had reflexes, stationary, locomotion, and object manipulation. And so again, back in the Peabody 2, If they were under 12 months of age, you use the first 3 on that list on the left, and over a year, you're going to use the bottom 3 on that left list. Well, they changed that a little bit, so we no longer have reflexes. If we look at that list on the right, the reflexes have been eliminated. I think a lot of people have found this favorable because it potentially does reflect more clinical practice now. I know not everyone is looking at reflexes in everything they do, certainly except in the case of certain neurological conditions. But there are a couple of headwriting items that have been added to body control. So stationary is now called body control. Locomotion has become body transport. And then object manipulation is now called object control. And then the other thing we'll talk about in a bit is they have added this physical fitness supplement. So the scoring that we're used to is going to use that gross motor quotient that's going to use the 3 pieces here on the right side that are up above. So body control and body transport. And then if the child is a certain age, we would have those ball skills or object control as part of those pieces. And we can go to the next slide. So if we're thinking about the starting ages, as you recall, this test goes from 1 month to 5 years, 11 months, and 30 days, depending on the month. Body control is going to start in the 1-month-olds. Body transport is also 1 month old, and object control is going to be 16 months. So it used to be about a year. We had those corralling skills in a sitting position, some of which were it was good to start to think about those ball skills. I think sometimes when I had younger kids, this is the first time they've ever been asked to play with the ball. So sometimes it was novel depending on how the family's play skills look. But 16 months is where this object control subtest is going to start in the new Peabody. And then there is a physical fitness supplement. So these are going to be some of those higher level skills. We'll look at those in a moment. Those are going to get scored separately. If you are doing that subtest, it's going to be 43 months up till the 71 months of age. All right, next slide. So some of the highlights, some of these might have been touched on in the preparatory materials you've already viewed. Others might be things that I just kind of looked at as we went through and took a look in preparation for this session. One of them is going to be that all object manipulation skills are in standing. So I think we could think of that as a positive or negative. There were children for whom they're not able to stand independently, so they got a 0 for all of object. I'm sorry, I called it object manipulation. It is object control in the new test. Sorry for my typo there. I'm so used to the old verbs, but it is manipulated in objects. So the object control skills are all in standing. There are no seated skills. So that could be problematic for children who maybe, stand with some support, but could get some points before with the seated skills. So plus or minus, depending on how you think about that. There are other children for which putting them in that corralling position may be too easy of a skill. So again, all those are going to be in standing for object control. And there is some improved clarity on some of those object manipulation or control skills. So if you see this little screenshot from item 25, if you recall the manual in the past, when we thought about things like throwing a ball, and it was throwing versus flinging. So there was a component of trunk rotation, bringing the arm back, bringing it all the way through, having a release at the wrist. There's now this little checklist that kind of calls out all of those pieces we're looking for. And then if you see below, the scoring system, a 2 is going to be with all of the criteria above. So that mature type of pattern they're looking for in the item, and then you can see some details below. So they tried to improve some of the clarity, so there wasn't as much interpretation needed or recollection in some of those object control skills where we're manipulating a ball from that perspective. All right, we can go to the next slide. The other thing I did want to mention, which I didn't have a specific slide for it, but body control, one of the things that I think has improved, if all of you have done this test in a child who's 2 to 3 years of age in the past, in the old stationary section, you might remember they used to have to go from tall kneeling to standing on 1 foot. And there were a lot of kids, that's a little bit of a jump in motor function. So there are more things like standing with eyes closed, some squatting, some stair mobility skills. They've moved those around a little bit, I think, in response to the fact I see some claps on the screen. I think we all agree. It used to be, some kids would, even in early intervention, they're getting therapy, they get evaluated for 3 years, and all of a sudden they look a lot different because there's not a lot of skills at that transition period between tall kneel and single leg stance. So I was happy to see that some of those have improved. When we go through scoring, Kristen's going to talk a little bit again about those 0, 1s, and 2s and the basals and the ceiling. So all of those are very similar. They have made the entry points a little bit clearer, so you don't have to scan through some of those purpley gray boxes that we used to have to look for. But for the scoring piece for gross motor, so we know we have this gross motor portion, the fine motor, and the total motor. For the gross motor section, body control and body transport are going to be the subtests that comprise the scoring for children under 16 months of age. So instead of there being 3 subtests for gross motor, it's going to be just the 2. And then for children 16 months and above, they're going to have all 3 of those on the left side. So they will have body control, body transport, object control, all going into their score and their norms and percentile values for the gross motor scoring. On the right side, you see the physical fitness piece. So that is actually a totally separate book. It's supplemental. It's sort of standalone scoring. So we're going to look at that as a separate scoring option. I think, if you think about those who might use the BOT 2, which will now soon be the BOT 3, versus the Peabody, there might have been some skills where the Peabody got a little bit easy. So I think for physical fitness, they may have tried to add in some more complicated combined skills like run 3 steps and then hop or whatever that might look like. So there are some higher level skills that might be a little more difficult than the total ceiling or final item of locomotion in the previous version of the Peabody. And again, this is for 43 to 71 months of age. And so you can see there's the examiner booklet for all of the other subtests, and then this kind of standalone supplemental booklet. So you would just kind of pull that in addition to the other one if you're going to be administering the physical fitness item. And then each of them do have separate scoring codes, which I know we'll get to in a little bit. All right, next slide. Some other highlights, which I guess I flipped these slides around a little bit, but you can see this beautiful demo, which is not me, but if you've ever had to demo a forward roll as a grown human, you may remember how awkward that is. So there are no more forward rolls. I think no more forward roll demos was lovely. I remember doing that sometimes in a school-based system if I was doing IU evaluations, and it's a little bit, here I am, here's the way we do it. So no somersaults for us, but also for children who we might be worried about hyperflexion, it's nice to know that that's not an option. So some children who might have risk for either atlantoaxial instability or just some concerns with neck stability, it's nice that we don't have to worry about that item or just ignoring or skipping that item. And then, like I said before, those reflex subtests have been removed, which may be more consistent with some of our current clinical practice. There certainly are times and places where we're using reflexes, but I have heard from some clinicians that maybe they only review reflexes because of the patients they see for this particular test and really don't need to use them a whole lot in their clinical practice, depending upon, again, the setting and the types of patients you're working with. All right, next slide. And then again, going back to that physical fitness subtest, so here we have 21 items. The items, I just wanted to highlight this a little bit because it's different for those who, of course, never had the physical fitness as part of the Peabody 2. It does include some ball skills, lateral jumps, and some jump distances. So some like lateral hops over a line, which may feel like some of our BOT 2 items are revisiting us on the Peabody. Sit-ups, there is the sit and reach. So if you are great at the presidential fitness test of the 1990s, it's coming back for you. Looking at hamstring length, and the sit and reach is part of this test. And then some running speed items have moved from locomotion to physical fitness, some of the higher level skills. All right, next slide. And then the other thing I just did want to mention, because these are in all of the kits. I know they're going to talk about, I think Maureen has many thousands of dollars worth of Peabody kits in her office right now while they're getting retrofitted with some pieces. But there is a little, oh, look, here they are. Thank you for sharing. If we think about the kits there are some errata, which I guess, it's going to happen as you bring through a new program. But I did just want to mention these because they are in the supplemental booklet for the physical fitness section. So if you're looking at items 1, 4, 8, 12, and 17, it mentions that you need a ball. You can tell from the picture they're looking at a tennis ball, but they're going to correct it in future versions of the printing. But some of you who are using these test kits for the first time may have kind of the one with the error. So I just wanted to call attention to that when you see it, and again, on the, just show you guys real quick, If you look on the side, you're going to see it's going to call for a ball. But if someone's throwing overhand 14 feet with one hand with good rotation, we're thinking about a tennis ball skill. So just know that there was an error in the printing as far as the materials required, and that should be corrected in the next batch of forms. All right, I think that's it for this section. Next slide.
Thank you so much, Anne. That was great. Um, all right, so in comparison, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the fine motor subtests. And Anne actually was holding up the booklets. The booklets are, I find that, oh, you know what, I'm blurred. My background's blurred. But they are more user-friendly, as Anne was saying, for like entry points. And they really do break down, like you can just use like this paper testing booklet. It talks about the materials, the position, and the procedure. So really, it's clear just from this like paper test book. If you just had this with you and you were semi-familiar with the test, you could just, give the test with just this booklet. There's enough information in it, which is nice. So just to compare and contrast the Peabody 2 to the Peabody 3, the Peabody 2, the two subtests were the grasping and visual motor, and in the Peabody 3, they've renamed these to talk about hand manipulation and eye-hand coordination. And again, as Anne said, there are different changes. Actually, I didn't go into very huge detail. I have this, I'm going to do like little videos that are going to be accessible to talk about like each little subtest changes, but there are considerable changes in the fine motor subtests from the Peabody 2. One of the ones that I love is there's not such a drastic jump in the grasping subtest, where before, those of you that were familiar, it sort of jumped from like 18 months to like 40 months for grasping, and it's not like that in the Peabody 3. Having said that, like Anne said, I think they have borrowed from different tests because there's a lot in the ages for the chronological ages that are higher in the test, but there's a lot of like do what I do. So like I'm tapping my hands on my lap and then I'm like turning them over and now you imitate what I'm doing. So like those types of tasks um, are in the Peabody 3. The starting ages for the fine motor subtests on the Peabody 3, eye-hand coordination is 1 month, hand manipulation is 1 month. And then just as I was mentioning before, what I love is the paper test booklets really provide details. Like I had mentioned, you really can just test from the test booklet itself. And you guys will be able to see that when you are able to hold the kits and look at them. So again, this slide is taken right from the ProEd slides. They did a really nice job, being concise. So I just took it out of the ones that you guys have already read. But just the things that I wanted to highlight, they really talk a lot about the development of the new subtests was because they're really looking at child development. And so, like, they're using their hands and fingers in different ways now. They're using like toy telephones and calculators and computers. So much to my chagrin, like I don't obviously we have to change the test for like what kids are doing with their hands, but also there's a sadness because some things that they've dropped are the coloring between the lines, the taking the socks off, and the turning pages of a book. So while I'm upset that they're missing, it sort of is trying to reflect the development that kids are having. We could have a whole nother discussion about how kids fine motor has changed. I know I'm seeing the faces, how fine motor has changed because kids are just so into electronics, but that's another soapbox for another time. But this test and the fine motor items really are trying to reflect that change. So again, the coloring between the lines, the taking off the socks, and the turning pages are tasks that have been omitted from the Peabody 3. And then, as Anne was mentioning, I actually received an email from ProEd that said there was a change in the scoring for this test item since it had been published last summer. The item 36, this is taken right from the email, just saying like these are the norms and this is what has changed for the time. I think it was normed using a shorter amount of time, but now they've increased the time for it. So this is just something to note. But again, as Anne mentioned, it will be corrected in the new versions of the test. Okay, and I'm just going to go over a little bit about the item administration. It's not drastically different from the Peabody 2, which I think is a nice thing. You can give 3 trials. You can sort of go over the item 3 times. They really say, of course, sticking to the script in the item administration and the examiner record book, but you can present it to the child 3 times to just be sure that they understand the directions, and then not giving extra trials unless they're indicated. And then let me move to the next slide to talk about the scoring. I'll go back to this slide, but let me jump to this slide. So again, they talk about really testing backwards until they get 3 2s in a row. Once they get the 3 2s in a row, similar to the Peabody 2, then you just assume that all the rest are 2s, and then you're going to still test forward until they get 3 0s in a row. So the basals and the ceilings are the same. But again, they mention, and let me go back to this slide. Um, when you're really administering to kids with disabilities, which obviously is a lot of the kids that we're administering the testing to, if an item is omitted, it must be scored as a 0. And so same thing, like if you're not seeing it in the clinic, you can't score it based on parent report. It really, if it's omitted or you're not seeing it, again, you're giving them the 3 trials. If you're not seeing it on any of those 3 trials, then it is scored a 0. So just to point out, not much different than the Peabody 2. Sorry, let me go forward now. Again, they really, so, I don't know if anyone is familiar with the Bailey, but the Bailey is very specific about entry points. The Peabody sort of leaves it again up to clinical judgment. Entry points are based on their chronological age, but they emphasize that examiners should really use their clinical judgment. And if you feel like their developmental level is less than their chronological age, then certainly it's fine to start at the chronological age entry point. Again, noting taken right from the pro ed slides that children with physical challenges, I don't love that wording, but children with physical challenges use their physical ability rather than age. Again, the basals and ceiling that we talked about. Again, the scoring. So the scoring, it's a 0, 1, or 2. 2 is when they perform the task exactly as noted in the booklets. 1 is they've performed it, but they don't fully meet the criteria. And again, 0 is they haven't attempted it at all, or you haven't, observed it at all. So again, 2s, 1s, or 0s. Okay. Um, Kathy, are there any questions thus far before we sort of go into this more complex part of the? No. Okay, everybody's
No,
following.
not yet.
Good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so one of the biggest changes, so I sort of have been joking that we've sort of opened Pandora's box, but one of the biggest changes in the Peabody 3 is that it comes with a I've been calling it a third party computerized scoring system. And so sort of what that means is it's the way that all the testing is going. The Peabody or the Bailey has Q Global. The Bot 3 is also going to be moving towards this, and the Peabody in particular. So basically, you're using the paper manual, or you're using the scorebook to get the raw scores, right? So that is the same. We're using the paper book to just go through and sort of say what are 2s, what are 1s, what are 0s. Okay. And then with the Peabody, you still can use your raw scores, which you're getting from the paper booklet. You still can use the raw scores and get age equivalents. Okay. There's an age equivalent table in the Peabody manual. Okay. I know that is not everyone's favorite way, right? We like the percentile ranks and the standard scores, but this is what I'm using in my research. Okay. So I'm doing the raw score and I'm getting the age equivalent. Again, that is available to us through the manual. So what this transition team has been struggling with, and actually it's a great thing to open Pandora's box, but we just sort of we're charting new territory, we should say. So basically CHOP, which we love this about CHOP, but they're very protective about patient information, right? Patient medical information. So the online scoring that comes with the pro ed kits for the Peabody 3, what you have to do to get the online scoring is you have to put in a patient name and a patient date of birth. So there's workarounds, right? Like you can put in a research number, you can put in like you don't have to actually put in the child's name. There's a workaround in that. But the date of birth, I think, is what we're sort of struggling with. I know it's 2 patient identifiers and sort of we've been back and forth with legal on all these things. But the short story is CHOP is still sort of like 9 months into this process. They are still vetting this third party online scoring site for the Peabody scores. Okay, so right now, and Maureen and I talked at 10 o'clock this morning. So I'm talking, this is like breaking news. As of right now, this is my losing sleep over moment, but as of right now, we still do not have a final decision about how CHOP is going to move forward. Now, I have great faith that we are going to have a final word about this because it is the wave of the future. And even me, your like paper clinging, post-it note, paper planner girl knows that we as an enterprise, CHOP has to embrace this because as I was talking to the people in contact trying to vet this process, their eyes were sort of opened up and said, "Oh, is this going on?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, you have no idea." So I know the bot 2 we've been doing online scoring. I know Q Global. I don't know if Sam is listening, but he's probably rolling his eyes at me. So CHOP is now aware, which I mean in my mind is like kind of too late that these things are going on, but just so we're aware as therapists that are protective of our patient data, we can't just go typing in the patient data to get our scores that we want, right? So just to go over it again, we are like I'm in constant contact with the people at CHOP and the people at ProEd, and now Maureen and Jamila will also be like we are like on this to get an answer. When we get an answer, there's going to be a job aid specifically about this where we will go more into like how to do the online scoring and how to register CHOP as the site and how to have it available. But for right now, if we want to use the Peabody, we do have it available where the paper manual does give you the age equivalents from the raw scores. So at least we have that part. But for right now, we don't have the standard score and percentile ranks worked out yet, but stay tuned. So I know that was a lot of information. I'm subdued because I sort of have a head cold, but everybody that knows me knows that this has been a soapbox of mine with the Peabody, and it's the wave of the future. So does anybody have, I guess, like some questions around it? There are some questions like we don't even know the answer to, but yes. Okay, Maureen. Yep. Essentially a paperwork issue at this point, not an impasse. Right. So CHOP has all the paperwork over to ProEd to say like, hey, vet this, make sure that you're handling our patient data fine. So once the paperwork is through, then we are good to go. So we are in the final stages. Um, Right, Meredith, yes. So when I say I opened up Pandora's box, I have opened up Pandora's box. Yes, we are currently using the online scoring for the bot 2, and we're also some people are using Q Global for the Baileys. The bot 3 is absolutely an online scoring. So yes, so now that we have opened up this box specifically for the Peabody, CHOP Legal now is sort of seeing this as a lens. I imagine every department in the hospital is probably using these third-party scoring systems. I don't even know if that's the right term, but you guys know what I mean. So CHOP, I feel like has to have a whole separate initiative to look into these things because basically we're putting our patient data on a place where it's CHOP. CHOP has to say that that place that's managing the data is secure enough to handle our patient data. So yeah, so stay tuned, stay tuned. But yes, we've opened Pandora's box, but I believe for a good reason. And we will, like Maureen said, good things will come of it. We're just sort of the guinea pigs on this. So stay tuned.
And then Anna, she had a question about infection control, but Jeannie will
Oh
present
yes.
on that shortly.
And Ashley, you are reading our minds. Right. So it's funny, this project, the Peabody started out it was a project to talk about the differences in the Peabody 2 and the Peabody 3 and the items but sort of our biggest sticking points have been this online scoring, the infection control, because unfortunately the Peabody still has wooden pieces, but Jeannie's going to talk about all that. Jeannie has gone above and beyond. She has a contact in the paint department. That's how above and beyond. So stay tuned on that. But yeah, so we've been talking about all these things very in depth. I'm very proud of our team. We have like been so dedicated to this gigantic project for the year. So yes, stay tuned. Okay, so we sort of are leaving that online scoring with a question mark. Once we get it, I'll attach a job aid. We're going to have standard operating procedures for all of these things because whatever team we are passing the baton to whoever wants to take on the bot 3, which will probably be a next year uh, thing, but we have a standard operating procedure now about who to check with about the online, who to talk to about the Epic flow sheets, who to talk about infection control. So we will have all of this put together. So it sort of became a larger project than just the Peabody. But everybody stay tuned. We will have everything spelled out very specifically for you. Okay, so I'm going to leave the online scoring. I'm going to move to the Epic flow sheet. Ashley Benkowski has been wonderful. With the Peabody 3 Epic flow sheet is ready to go. Okay, Ashley Benkowski created it way long ago. I think before January, this is like in the works and done. So it's waiting. So I know two people specifically, Jean Flickinger and Stacy Kuzik, had reached out to me. I think what I should have said in the beginning was that our vision is that our vision is that once we as a team, like best practice is that this test has been out for a year now. In July, it will have been out for a year. So best practice is once the new test is out, we will not be using the Peabody 2, okay? Because the Peabody 3, which was 20 plus years in the making, is using all this new right standard scores and standard data. So we will not be using the Peabody 2. However, Jean Flickinger and Stacy Kuzak are two people. If there's anyone else, please reach out to me. But I know there's people that are doing research studies with IRBs attached to them where the Peabody 2 is the test that you're using. So the EPIC flow sheet for those people specifically will still be available. But for all of the rest of us clinically, once our department officially transitions, we're sort of hedging our bets on the date, but it's going to be soon. We're hedging our bets because we have these two things still outstanding. Once we officially transition to the Peabody 3, the Epic flow sheets for the Peabody 2 will not be available. Okay. So Ashley Benkowski's, it's going to be a hard stop, not available unless you're in research projects with IRBs that have to use the Peabody 2. If this is you and you're listening to this presentation, please just drop me an email just so that I can get a list over to Ashley just so that we know who's going to be using them. Okay, so Epic flow sheets for the Peabody 3 are developed. They are not live yet. We wanted to do this presentation and rollout before we made them live, so stay tuned. Stay tuned on that. There was one other thing that I wanted to say. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say about this, and actually I think it's in my next slide. You know what, Jeannie, I'm going to pass it to you, but let me just say one more thing. I'm gonna bring it back to infection control, which is going to be Jeannie. But let me just say one more thing.
And then,
Um,
Kristen, maybe we could just pause for a few more
yep.
questions before
Yes. Go
Jeannie
ahead.
starts. No,
Yep.
you finish and then I'll let you know the
Okay.
questions.
Okay. Um, These are great questions. I'm sort of reading it out of the corner of my eye. I have to wear glasses now for close. So this is what 47 looks like for me. Um, that's like very small writing in that chat. But anyway, so we have the kits. Maureen, thank you for that in the background. Your groupies are sort of watching. I think there's 20 kits in Maureen's office. We as a team, meaning all of us on the team that I mentioned, have assembled the the kits. We're going to put them all in nice bags. I printed out all the black line cutting and drawing masters. There's going to be a laminated copy in each one. We're going to have a day where all the specialty care centers, we sort of are hedging our date, but it will be out to you guys. But everybody, we're going to collect all the Peabody 2 kits. We're going to collect all the Peabody 2 paper copies, and we're going to bring them, and then we're going to like distribute the Peabody 3 kits. Every clinic, every specialty care center, all the outpatients, inpatients, inpatient rehab, we have it all coordinated and numbered. The kits are going to have a number. I've been working with Joyce about having the aides, you know, manage the infection control piece, which Jeannie's going to talk about. So all of it is very organized and ready to roll out. I just wanted to talk about some things in the Peabody 3 kit, which will be a good lead into Jeannie. Um, and then I'll pause for questions. But again, the Peabody kits, as we ordered them, had stuffed animals in them. They had crayons in them. They had all the wooden pieces. And so I have a contact named Terry at ProEd that I talk to every day. And I say, hey, Terry, CHOPS Infection Control says this. We cannot use wooden pieces. Can we substitute a plastic toy for a stuffed animal? And then I go back to our group and say, guys, we need to find a plastic toy that meets the criteria. So we have like covered everything. So when we roll out the kits, the substitutions are going to be put in the kits ready to go. And the substitutions have already been approved by the Peabody authors. And so just stay tuned for these beautiful kits that are going to be rolled out. But the whole reason I'm telling you that is we want your Peabody 2 paper score sheets especially, because the two people that I mentioned that are still using the Peabody 2 for research, our department decided that we are not ordering any more Peabody 2 paper copies because we're transitioning, but the people that are still using them for research really could use the paper copies that are scattered around specialty care centers. So if you guys don't mind after this presentation, just sort of locating your kits, and even if it's just one paper copy, just when we ask for kits to be turned in, just turning in the paper copies of the score sheets as well, we'd appreciate it. So, okay, let me pause here for questions, and then I'll pass it to Jeannie with the infection control piece. But Kathy, what questions do we have?
So the first one, and Ashley, if you want to come off mute, please feel free. Heather Aker asked if the timeline, and Heather, I think you're meaning the timeline of using the new flow sheets will be in line when we get approval for use of the online scoring. I think ideally, yes. But Ashley did respond and said, if we decide to move forward with using the raw score only, then we can utilize the new flow sheets with just that information until we have the online scoring up and running. And then Sumaglaw said, oh, this is a good question. Oh, Ash, you already answered it. Will the review function, the flow sheet review function for the PDMS2 still be available? And the answer is yes.
Oh, that's great. That's a great question too. Sue, thanks for asking that. Yep, that's great.
And then another comment from Heather, advocate for not stopping the Peabody 2 until we can use the percentile
Yes.
standard scores.
That's
Yeah.
the plan.
Heather, so yes, we have been in such deep discussion about this. It's in my dreams at this point. I agree. Right. So this will be like ongoing discussion, but we have high hopes that this is going to be figured out sooner rather than later, so we don't have to come up with a contingency plan, which is sort of what I've been calling it, a contingency plan. Um, we're really hoping. I mean, we're at like the last steps of this being vetted and said, okay, from a CHOP standpoint, it's like at the paperwork part. So we are like almost there. So yes, we will come up with a contingency plan. So stay tuned, but hopefully this will be ready to go shortly. Apologies that it's not so black and white, but we just wanted to still do this presentation and be transparent that we're almost there for the vetting of the online scoring.
I think
My
that's
turn,
it for
Kristen.
now.
No other questions?
Okay.
Okay.
Can I address Jamie's
ahead.
question really quickly?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Sure.
So Jamie had a question about pulling through, because I think one of the important things is if we pull through Peabody 2 scores into the Peabody 3, like with the review flow sheets, they wouldn't be meaningful because they were done with a different set of norms, a different set of values. But I
Yep.
think the idea is you'll still be able to look at historical data, and then moving forward, against once we have this ability to score, then we would be collecting Peabody 3 in clinics and other settings, moving in that direction. So data are not all lost from the past 20 years. It's just
Right.
that we wouldn't compare them in the same way. So I just want to make sure that was clear for the question she had.
And
Thanks.
then, and Ashley, sorry, I missed yours. So every kit will have its own scoring manual. Yes.
Oh, yes. Yep. Yes, every kit. Yep. And there's plenty of paper copies and we're gonna Joyce and I and the aides, we're going to have a very specific, like it's the ordering of the paper copies is going to be the same. Everything should be the same from that standpoint as the Peabody 2. There's a paper manual, there's an examiner's manual, there's a like in the Peabody 2 when it had the specific book that was like you could read it for like how to give each item. It's similar in the Peabody 3. They have that book in there as well. And they recommend there's no formal like training like the Bailey, but the Peabody recommends, that you're familiar with that book before you administer the test. But yeah. Yep. Thanks, Anne. You're our Vanna. We appreciate that.
And Jamie, just another thought on what you were saying, if it's comparable, I do love about this new version is that they've done kind of the standardization, it's updated. So they've done it like on kids now. So that might impact how we compare in that the norms might have changed slightly because they redid the norms on the current population. But
Yeah, and I think, Kathy, that speaks again to what they sort of said in the beginning of that beautiful pro ed PowerPoint that they really, I mean, like it or not, kids are not, they're using, iPads and things like that more. So they took out things like coloring between the lines and turning pages of a book and taking some, again, that's a different soapbox for a different time, but right, so that it's really like up to date.
Jean, we'd in terms of a kit, I'll message you after because we kind of took an inventory, and we did get one, I think, for Mido and Pompeii to share, but we did get you a kit.
Yes, there's 20 kits ready to go. Jeannie's going to talk about we have spares too, but we really sat down and looked at all the people that needed kits. So stay tuned on that. I'm gonna pass it to Jeannie to talk about her beautiful infection control deep dive into infection control. Jeannie is like the person. So Jeannie, here is your slide.
Thank you very much. So a deep dive into infection control. If you have been following the CHOP-wide established protocols for infection control, nothing will be new. But I suspect, especially in clinics or in outpatient, where places where you may not have an aid readily available, that infection control might not always be followed the way it should be. So a job aid has been developed that will be included with each of the kits that highlights and points out the different types of infection control that we need to follow for these kits in order to be in line with the CHOP established protocols. So as I said, the job aid will put that through. I'm going to walk through some of the general stuff, the general cleaning for test items. First and foremost, any child who is going to be administered the Peabody and any person who is administering it should practice hand hygiene as established by CHOP protocols. Now, I know this is hard when you have a 2-month-old or, an older child who may not follow directions or not, but we have to implement that to the best possible way that we can. With infants, we can use Sandy wipes. Older children can actually wash their hands with soap and water or use Purell. But hand hygiene is going to be the first line of defense in administering this test. In terms of other general cleaning items, one of the key things is that when testing is completed, all items that have been used during the testing are to be kept separate from any unused or already cleaned items, and they need to be labeled as dirty. And then those dirty test items should be, and must be cleaned according to the CHOP established infection control protocols and guidelines. There are no stopwatches or timers in the kits. It is assumed that everybody will use smartphones and some kind of an app on the phone for timing or stopwatching or any of that. So smartphones have to be cleaned according to CHOP's electronic device protocol and guidelines, which requires they be wiped with alcohol wipes and or Oxivir. And you should do that before and after using them during the administration of the test. All plastic and non-porous dirty test items should be wiped with Oxivir and allowed to dry for the requisite amount of time that Oxivir needs in order to be effective. There will be special consideration. I'm going to go through certain items that we have to do different kind of stuff. Any test item that can potentially be mouthed by a child or that has indeed been mouthed by a child during testing should be cleaned according to the utensil cleaning protocol that we've all gone through in the last 6 months as a result of a JACO write-up for us. So that means that you should go back and review your video about utensil cleaning, because it's going to require that test item needs to be washed with an approved dish soap by CHOP, a CHOP approved dish soap, soap and water, needs to be dried with a clean paper towel. Then you have to disinfect it with Oxivir, and then the item has to dry according to the requisite time for the Oxivir product. Then you have to rinse it with potable water and dry it with yet another clean paper towel before returning it to your kit. So I suspect that that's going to be a lot of steps in a lot of places. And part of the cleaning protocol that Joyce protocols that Joyce and the aides are going to be working out in each of your respective sites and clinics, you're going to have to work with your leadership teams to figure out how to get access to the aides, how if you can't do this cleaning process between patients, how is that going to get done in each of your specific areas? So then on to the specialty items that are in the Peabody kit. Were a number of items that are made of soft materials or fabric. So as Kristen has already mentioned, the kits came with a very soft toy, a soft stuffy, and those have been removed from all kits, and we've been given permission by the test authors to replace them with plastic items that can be wipeable with Oxivir. So if you get a kit, there shouldn't be no stuffed animal in it. If you, yeah.
It's Kristen. I just wanted to interrupt you.
Yeah.
And just so you guys know, that item is mainly in the gross motor section. They're sort of using it as like climb up the stairs and get get the stuffed animals. So like it really was like it's not doing anything to any standard score. It was more of like to entice kids to do a gross motor task.
Yeah. So it's been replaced with a wipeable toy. Follow the chop wide protocol. Washcloths are a test item. They are to be supplied from chop linen. They are single use and they go into laundry when they're done. The fabric button strip that's used in the fine motor test items is a cotton fabric, and you cannot use Oxivir on cotton fabrics. According to chop protocol, those kind of fabrics should be laundered with an approved chop soap and water, and then allowed to air dry. So our recommendation is going to be hand laundering with the approved chop dish soap, Palmolive, and allowed to air dry. The string and lace that come as part of the kit and are used with the rattle on a string, stringing beads, and the lacing test item, again, like the cotton fabric, should be washed with the approved soap and water from that CHOP allows and allowed to air dry, unless you can figure out if you've used a replacement string or something. If it is made of nylon or vinyl, then you can use a spray version of Oxivir, but not the Oxivir wipes. So you would have to figure out in your setting, do you have access to the spray Oxivir, which CHOP does carry it through environmental services. You would have to go through your environmental service people to see if you can get some spray and then use it according to the requisite way for anything that is vinyl or nylon. Otherwise, hand wash and air dry. Tennis balls have been included in the kits, and they are in the process of being replaced with something that is wipeable, again, with the permission from the test authors. If you have to use a tennis ball, sometimes it's for older kids, apparently, and for the infants, the infant doesn't typically touch the ball. Then you would really have to apply hand hygiene before use of the child touching the ball. Until we get the replaceable balls that are wipeable. So the bigger item is all the wooden items that came in the kit. These include the puzzle board, puzzle pieces, the blocks that are used for building as well as stringing are the same blocks. There are not separate blocks for those tasks now. The pegboard and the pegs. There are portions of all of those wooden toys that did not have some sort of protective seal over it. So all of those wooden items had to be collected from the kits we bought and sent to the paint department, and they have been sealed, fully sealed, with a CHOP approved sealant that stands up to Oxivir wiping. So when you get your new kit, the wooden items will be able to be wiped with Oxivir. However, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Jeannie. I'll finish when you're done. I'll say.
Yeah. Over time, that sealant that they used will wear down as a result of being wiped with Oxivir. And so every time those wooden toys are used and washed, they need to be inspected for any kind of breakdown in the sealant. And then there will be a process for submitting those items to be resealed through the paint department. Typically, part of what's going to happen is there's going to be a protocol put in place for the cleaning, use of rehab aids in doing that cleaning, and it will be the responsibility of the aides for arranging for items to be resealed as we go forward. But you will need to contact aides when you have materials that show wear or breakage in the sealage to let them know that you need to have your items, the items need to be resealed in order to be used again.
Jeannie, can I
So, yeah,
I just wanted to just interject here. Your attention to this detail is so appreciated. I just want to just say to everybody, I've been using one of the kits that has been dipped by the paint department. And it does not affect, you can't even, it's like, because my concern was the pegs in the new Peabody are very tiny. I don't know if anybody's seen them, but they're almost smaller than like a candle size versus like the bigger size diameter pegs. And they fit in just fine. Like the coating that Jeannie's contact, this lovely person in the paint department added, it still makes, it doesn't have anything, it's not stopping the puzzle pieces from going in. And again, everything that we changed it went back to the test authors to say like, hey, can we do this? And the test authors said yes, because apparently we are the only site that's using this that has mentioned the infection control issues. So again, yes, this is
sad
giant.
commentary.
Yeah, sad commentary. But yeah, so all of this has been approved by CHOP and also the test makers. Sorry, go ahead, Jeannie.
No, that's okay. So when you identify that items need to be resealed, our goal is not to leave you without pieces to your kit. So part of the collection back of the Peabody 2s is any wooden items in the Peabody 2s will go to the paint department to be resealed, and we will keep those items in inventory so that when you have a kit where your pieces need to be resealed, there will be a swap system. So you can request new replacement pieces for those wooden items. They'll be brought out to you, and then you give the aides the ones that need to be resealed. Once those pieces are resealed, the resealed items will go into the inventory. So we're going to try to hopefully make this as seamless as possible and not inconvenience people.
Exactly.
But yeah, there will be some sort of an inventory program that you can access new pieces from without having a lag time and being able to administer the test if you do that on a regular basis.
And just so everyone knows, again, I don't know if Joyce is on this call, but Joyce and I and Lee have had just some preliminary like brainstorming ideas. My idea was sort of like the roller skating rink where it's like you hand in your shoes and you get your roller skates and then you hand, just some sort of way to keep, because I know everybody's eye rolling, because what our fear is that the kits are just going to, what we all do is we're running from patients and everything's scattered, and all these things that we so painstakingly like organized in these kits like are just going to go scattering through no one's fault. It's, we all are like therapists that are treating on the fly, like we understand, but hopefully we are working behind the scenes, not just for the Peabody, but a way to sort of streamline that process as well. So this project with the Peabody has sort of opened our eyes to a couple things that we want to tweak, but I know people are eye rolling like, how in the world are we actually going to do all these things? But we have we all of these talks
in
are
process.
yeah, big process. So
In
anyway,
process, yeah.
in process.
Yeah. So hopefully as part of that process, there will be some sort of a regular inspection of the kits, whether it will be every 6 months or depending on how often a kit is used, sooner or later. But to have the aides inspect the kits on a regular basis in order to catch things before they're going to be breached or anything like that. The one other wooden item that is typically in the test kits for the fine motor sections are wooden clothespins, and those have been replaced with plastic ones that can be wiped with Oxivir. The other specialty items are anything that is laminated, which are going to be the masters for cutting and drawing and things like that, that Kristen has put together. There will be laminated masters that you will need to photocopy in order to provide your child with something to cut on. So the laminated masters.
I just wanted to note one more thing. When we are able to log on to that third-party scoring, the Blackline Masters now, like ProEd has them available when you log into like CHOP's like electronic scoring system. They have these that you just download, but just to make it easier, we just printed them out, which again was all okay with ProEd, and we just laminated them and put them in the kits. But they also they live like on the website, which we're trying to have access to. So just stay tuned on that.
So
There's
those
4.
oops, sorry.
No,
Those
go ahead.
laminated masters, the playing cards, the lacing cards are all laminated. Laminated items can be wiped with Oxivir and should be. If there is any kind of breach in the lamination, then they need to be thrown out and replaced. So toss your playing cards, get a new set, make new laminated masters. And again, the rehab aides will be your go-to people for those kind of replacement things that they can print off and make, or depending on how we go there. Again, in the fine motor section, there's some writing implements that are used. Crayons are considered single-use at CHOP. So if you use a crayon, send it home with the child or throw it out. You can use and replace those kinds of crayons with the twistables that are plastic and are wipeable with Oxivir. So that's an option. Wooden pencils are considered single-use items. Again, if a child uses it, send it home with them or throw it out. You can replace it with mechanical pencils that have plastic sheaths that can be wiped with Oxivir. So the job aid for all these cleaning recommendations will be made part of the kit. So there should be one in every kit. And as part of the job aid, there will be links to all of the standard CHOP-wide approved protocols and guidelines for infection control.
Jeannie,
That's
there
all I
are
have.
a few, two questions for on the environmental thing. And Ashley said, I thought our cleaning policy says for things like button strips, as long as the patient completes hand hygiene and doesn't go into the mouth, that it could be returned for use for another patient. Is that true?
I think the protocol actually says they should still be laundered once a week.
Okay. And then Elizabeth added to that, if the button strip is washed and someone else needs the kit, the strip will now be wet for the next patient to access. I wondered if we could use like the extras from the Peabody
Exactly.
to kind of like
Have
be
one or two in each kit.
one
Yeah.
or two in each kit.
Yeah. And if you're finding that you're doing testing of that age group so much back to back that even two in a kit is not enough, then that would need to be brought to leadership so we can address it. Yeah.
And then I did put a list of like how we broke down. We kind of did as good as an inventory as we could, and then based it on that. There are two questions about clinics that our department has not purchased for, and so in answer to that, CKDP, for example, has already, they were actually the first ones to purchase the kit. We will support the kind of sealing and all that kind of thing. And then Jordan Neonatal Follow-Up Clinic, I'm going to ask them, we'll ask the clinics that have purchased it before if they will upgrade to the new system on my list. Any other questions? New messages. Oh, thank you, Jordan. And feel free to come off mute.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know people probably have to run to treat. Again, this
2 minutes. Good job, guys.
When we still have much to add, everything we talked about is going to be very specifically added and put in a shared drive, new staff to access and all the things. But certainly let us know. Two things, email me if you're still using the Peabody 2 for research, and if you have any additional questions, you can email all of us, any of us, anything.
And in the last 2 minutes, I did just want to do two shout outs. The one is to Kristen, who was not planning on doing this year. It has been done very much with love in her own time, but she's done a really fantastic job of being thorough, and I think it sets us up for success for in the future when we transition to other new kits. And then the second one, although she hates the spotlight, is Jeannie Cribben, who is, Jeannie, is it okay for me to say that will be retiring? And so next Friday is her last day as a full-time employee. And I just think it's amazing that at the kind of towards the end of your time here that you embarked on this big project, and your help has been invaluable. Yes, you went deep, you found out all these things, and actually I've been able to pass this along to other institutions as a heads up. Lurie, for example, is very appreciative. They're looking for their own paint guy.
Their paint guy, Jeannie's paint guy. I love Jeannie. Oh, she above and beyond for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you,
Kristen.
Jeannie. You really are amazing. You're
amazing.
A gem.
Yes.
Jackie V says she can't wait for you to babysit her children. Jeannie, you're getting all the love. Can you see the chat?
It's lighting up crazy. Is Jeannie still there?
Yes, I am still there.
All right.
This is a testament to my technological incapability, which is why I must retire.
Jeannie, you rock.
You rock 100%. Yes. We're all struggling with technology, so just bear with us all. Oh my gosh, huge.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Yes. Are there any further questions, Kath?
No, I don't think so. All the love for Jeannie.
All the love, and it's recorded, Jeannie, so you can go back and watch it.
Yeah.
I'll take it as a memento. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Bridget, are you still on? Because I want to be able to save this.
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Just get head up to the 3 dots,
3 dots.
click, and then hit stop recording.
Oh, yes, stop recording. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. It's right there, isn't it? Yes, here we go. Stop recording.